Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Charles Pellegrin. In the show this week, China's renewed battle against COVID-19, a spike in cases and even the return of a handful of deaths, the Omicron variant posing a big challenge to Beijing's zero-COVID policy. And while the world is feeling the pinch with prices climbing on the back of the war in Ukraine, we see how this has impacted Japan's economy and its infamous deflationary spiral. And a battle of the conglomerates in India. Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Group and American tech giant Amazon go head-to-head over the fate of Future Group, while France 24's Yuka Royer will walk us through the saga. After first appearing in China over 2 years ago, COVID-19 has come back to the Middle Kingdom. The country had largely succeeded in keeping the country's infection and mortality rates in check. But in recent weeks, the Omicron variant has posed a significant challenge to the country's zero-COVID strategy and once again forced harsh lockdowns and restrictions. James Vecina has a story.
It's a state of affairs that China hadn't experienced since the virus first emerged in Wuhan back in 2020. 3 days of lockdown for the 4.5 million residents in Jilin, in what's becoming a recurring scene as the country enforces its zero-COVID policy measures.
Thanks to the 2 years of experience that we have, we formed a set of epidemic prevention and control concepts, strategies and methods.
Measures that differ from one city to another in an effort to stem the spread of COVID-19. And at the heart of the response, officials want to minimize the blow that this standstill has on the economy, both in China and worldwide.
We will build a strong defense for epidemic prevention and ensure a steady flow in our ports to ensure that residents' everyday life as well as businesses remain stable and orderly.
Both the supplies and the price of food are being monitored as community workers deliver necessities to residents required to stay indoors. As countries worldwide have struggled with regular upsurges in COVID-19, preferring to adopt a strategy seeking to live with the virus, sudden lockdowns and widespread testing have been key to keeping the spread of COVID-19 under control in China. And while the country may be slowly relaxing its zero-COVID policy by allowing the use of at-home testing kits and limiting admissions into hospitals, its programme will now be put to the test, with some experts saying it may be time to move on, as it remains to be seen whether it will be effective enough to control the highly transmissible Omicron variant.
Well, we've seen a slight tweak of China's zero-COVID strategy on the mainland, but Hong Kong has announced a more significant shift in its own policy towards COVID, loosening some stringent restrictions. The Chinese Special Administrative Region has struggled to maintain a zero-COVID approach in the past month, faced with an unprecedented Omicron outbreak with over 1 million cases and 5,600 deaths. Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, announced a raft of measures, including the lifting of flight bans from 9 countries, the shortening of centralized quarantine for arriving travelers, and the return of in-person teaching for most schools in mid-April. An uncertainty over the war in Ukraine is rising prices everywhere, including in Japan, that's long been stuck in deflation. New government data shows consumer prices rose for 6 straight months in February, up 0.6% compared to the same month in 2021. The price rise in Japan is still a lot smaller than in many other places, though. The main reason for this is the country's slow economic recovery and even slower wage growth after 2 so-called lost decades, leaving Japan in a deflationary spiral. Our correspondents sent us this report from Tokyo.
This supermarket near Tokyo is embroiled in a price war.
When we checked up on our competitor, they were running a promotion, selling this product at a lower price. So we reduced our price by 11 yen during their promotion period. We've increased sales just by doing that.
Japan is one of few countries where prices of some items have been falling. To make this possible, food manufacturers have slightly reduced the quantity of product in each package. They believe consumers will accept the change in return for saving a few yen.
I'm careful about how much I spend. I think producers are doing their best to keep prices down.
There's a lot of choice here, and the products aren't expensive. The prices seem to be stable.
Umaibo, a corn snack, has gone in the opposite direction. Its price rose recently for the first time in 43 years, but only by 2 yen. Umaibo are far from the exception when it comes to price stability. Unfortunately, Japanese consumers have not been spending as freely as the government would like. This economist believes they've been sucked into a deflationary spiral over the last 20 years.
Employees know they're not going to get a wage rise, so they save up. That means companies will continue to reduce their prices in order to sell. We got trapped inside a deflationary spiral.
Japan's government has asked employers to raise salaries in an attempt to boost consumption. While the rest of the world frets over inflation, Japan is trying in vain to create it.
Next, we're going to look at the merciless battle taking place in India between two of the world's richest men. Amazon's Jeff Bezos and Indian business magnate Mukesh Ambani are locked in a dogfight over the Future Group, a cash-strapped Indian conglomerate. Well, after months of legal standoffs, the saga recently took a dramatic turn. Well, for more on this, Yuka Roye from our business desk joins us on set. Thanks for joining us. So, Yuka, what's this all about?
Well, Charles, this dispute started in 2020 when the Future Group agreed to sell its retail unit to Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Industries for more than 3 billion euros. A deal Amazon has gone all out to block, saying it violates its own contract with Future. Now, the US e-commerce giant says that when it invested $200 million in Future back in 2019 and became an indirect shareholder, it agreed a deal that prohibited the Indian group from selling its retail assets to certain rivals, including Reliance. And the case has gone all the way up to India's Supreme Court, which has yet to deliver its ruling. Then, late last month, Reliance, which had not played a public role in this dispute thus far, suddenly seized control of hundreds of Future's stores, like the Big Bazaar supermarket chain, citing unpaid rent. It sent an army of managers, employees as managers, and even changed the decor and the name of the store. A move denounced as a fraud by Amazon, which lashed out at both Future and Reliance in a scathing newspaper ad.
So definitely a surprise move then. Did it catch Amazon off guard?
Well, the move was described as a bloodless coup waged by Reliance's boss, Mukesh Ambani, India's richest man, that he stealthily crept up from behind and outsmarted the US behemoth. Even Future, who desperately wants to sell itself to Reliance, also said that it was caught by surprise and that it intended to try and take back the stores from Ambani's group. Now, Future was just the latest target for the 64-year-old business tycoon who has turned a family retail business into India's most valuable company, with interests stretching from energy to medicine, telecoms and media to even sports. Now, the tycoon recently bought New York's five-star hotel, Mandarin Oriental.
So what's exactly at stake here?
Well, why does it matter so much? Well, that's the question. Well, this is really a battle for supremacy in India's retail market that's expected to surpass 1 trillion euros in the next few years. And Future is India's second largest retailer behind Reliance. Amazon once said that its ambition in India was to become everything for everyone. It's lost an all-important China market to local competitors such as Alibaba. So it's only natural that Amazon has doubled down on the India market in recent years. And when Jeff Bezos visited the country back in 2019, he promised huge investments in the nation of 1.4 billion people. He even made a promotional clip of a fleet of electric-powered rickshaws. Rickshaws are the mini cars, minivans in India. Amazon has expanded its offering in India beyond e-commerce, including music streaming, video streaming, education, and grocery delivery, hence its interest in Future with its fleet of supermarkets. Meanwhile, Amazon's rise has been a thorn in the side of Ambani, who's eyeing a global expansion himself.
Yuka Roye from France 24's Business Desk, thank you very much. And let's end off the coast of Australia, where the Great Barrier Reef has undergone heat stress with temperatures 2 to 4 degrees Celsius above average. This has resulted in bleaching of coral in some areas and even some corals dying. Well, Australia has so far managed to avoid receiving an in danger label from UNESCO thanks to intense lobbying, but the World Heritage Body is sending experts on a 10-day mission to the reef starting this week. Even without UNESCO's ruling, scientists believe the situation is critical. Let's take a listen.
In terms of whether we will be listed on an endangered list or not, if that's the wake-up call that we here in Australia need to have, then that's the wake-up call that we need to have. That also says that we need help and that we need to make rapid and urgent efforts to address that number one problem that the Great Barrier Reef is facing, which is climate change.
Well, that's it for this edition of Access Asia. Thank you for watching. Do stay tuned to France 24.